And we're live.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for Ask Dr. Ann Live. My goals are always the same, and that is to motivate you, inspire you, and ultimately empower you with the knowledge you need to live the healthiest life. I love clearing up areas of confusion people have, and I know it's from doing this a long time that confusion is rampant and it seems to be as high as ever. So we've already had some wonderful questions submitted, and as usual, we're going to start first with those that submitted the questions. I also want to acknowledge people that are going to watch this as a recording. We're grateful for your ears and your eyes, as well as those that are joining us live. So thank you so much, Zoe. Zoe reads the questions more clearly than I do, so I'm going to let her do that. Thank you.
Okay, so our first question is, I know you should limit red meat to no more than 2 meals a week, but does that include venison? Thank you so much for making such a huge difference in my life.
So happy to help you. So red meat, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about red meat because I'm prepping for my next course, which is coming up in January, focusing on weight loss. And anyway, yeah, it is my standard recommendations to limit red meat to 2 servings or less a week. And there's lots of reasons for that. Powerful data telling us that people that eat the most red meat are more likely to be heavier, more likely to get various cancers, particularly colorectal cancer, more likely to get cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, amongst some other things. Anyway, and with so many other wonderful proteins available, you need not miss your red meat. So what about venison? So I consider wild game, of which venison would be an example of that. Things like, duck or dove or quail, things that someone has actually gone out into the wild and hunted themselves. So venison is, in my book, one of the healthiest forms of red meat. And so if you're going to choose red meat, I think venison is fantastic. And that is what I do because we have access to lots of venison because my husband hunts deer and other people in my family do. And if you look at the, sort of the nutritional profile of venison, you see, first of all, it's super lean. It's very low in saturated fat, which is one of the things bad about many sort of standard cuts of red meat. In addition, it's out in the wild. It's for it's eating a native diet. It's going to contain omega-3 fats. Venison will have some omega-3 fats in there. And less, obviously no hormones, no antibiotic residues, hopefully virtually, minimal environmental toxins because it's feeding naturally and hopefully really natural environments. Anyway, so I would consider venison red meat, and I think it's one of the, if you're going to eat red meat, it's a great choice. And then otherwise, grass-fed beef. And I would still limit it to 2 servings or less a week.
Okay, great. The next question says, my CT ultrasound showed that I have gravel on my gallbladder. Can those be dissolved? If so, what to do?
Yeah, I wish. So that sounds like this person's got some what we call like sludge, not necessarily, big form stones, gallstones, but sludge in the gallbladder, which can be just as uncomfortable and can cause the same kind of problems you can get from gallstones. So I wish I had some dietary magic for that particular pathology, but I don't. I have never read that you can do anything about that through diet or lifestyle. It's pretty rare that we can't fix things, many things through diet and lifestyle. And I wish I've had family members that have had that same thing and they've had to have their gallbladders removed. So.
Okay, next question. This person says,
let me just say this, for that person, follow your doctor's advice. Whoever diagnosed that, do what they say. So
okay,
go ahead.
So this next question says, I'm a 76-year-old female, eat no red meat, chicken about once a week, some oily fish, lots of nuts, seeds, legumes, and lots of veggies and fruits. I have dysphagia and must use a thickener for thin liquids. It contains soluble fiber, xanthan gum, gluconodelta-lactone, potassium sorbate, and the long list of
Yeah.
ingredients that you reviewed. So her question is, to my gut health, and how can I mitigate any damage from them?
Okay, so first of all, I did scan the ingredients that I have typically looked at all the questions that were submitted. This I'll be somewhat familiar, and for this person, you've got to be able to drink thin liquids. I mean, you can't survive without taking in liquids, right? So it is what it is, and those things that are in there, many of them are completely benign, harmless, but they're thickeners, right? Which is just a form of soluble fiber, like the guar gum. There were several in there that are forms of soluble fiber. Soluble fiber reacts with water and turns it into something thicker, like almost gel-like. And although we are concerned about emulsifiers, which are common additives, these thickeners are not the same thing as emulsifiers, right? So I'm thinking this particular person is a little bit confused, that they're worried that the things that are in there are emulsifiers. They're not emulsifiers, those are thickeners. We really don't have much data on, are they doing things bad to the gut microbiome? I would imagine they are having some impact, because your gut bugs can typically ferment soluble fiber, and most thickeners are a form of soluble fiber. Soluble fiber that's naturally present in food is something that we love. It is extremely, extremely helpful. And one of the biggest things that makes it helpful is because it's feeding those good gut bugs that then produce all sorts of wonderful things, like short chain fatty acids that have a list of health benefits about that long. But we don't have any evidence that artificially extracted and additive type soluble fibers, like that are in this particular preparation this woman has to take. We don't have any evidence that those things are doing the good that you get in soluble fiber. That's a natural part of the matrix of a whole real food. Anyway, and I've never read specific studies on risk to the microbiome of that thing she's taking, or really much on even thickeners at this point in time. So we really just don't know.
Okay, next question. I know that mushrooms have wonderful cancer-fighting properties, vitamins, and nutrients. Are there any certain types that are especially great when choosing which to buy?
So the great thing about mushrooms is they are all amazing. And this is important because there's lots of different ones and they're different price points. So let's talk about the highlights of why mushrooms are so special. First of all, they're in a food group all on their own. They're actually a fungus. There's no other food. They're their own unique food group. And as you would surmise, they have their own unique sort of health attributes. They're exceedingly low in calories. They're almost like no calories. So a cup of mushrooms is 15 calories, yet it does have a respectable amount of protein. For 15 calories, you get 2 grams of protein, 1 gram of fiber. That's pretty amazing. So they can give you some protein. They give you fiber, including some very, very special types of fiber called polysaccharides, which we have learn can actually be wonderful for sort of favorably stimulating your immune system. So they're really good for immune function. And we can also get B vitamins and some minerals in mushrooms, and also lots of powerful phytochemicals, and particularly antioxidant phytochemicals. So mushrooms, lots and lots of antioxidants. Why are antioxidants good? Within the body at the molecular level, which is what I like to think is the nitty gritty level, although you have the quantum level below that. But for the molecular level, the final common pathway of damage is almost virtually always through oxidation. And anytime we have damage in the body, it's not good, because it typically will lead to some inflammation. So I always like to tell people, think of antioxidants as also being anti-inflammatory, right? Because anytime we calm down oxidation, we will typically lower inflammation in the body. Anyway, mushrooms are very, very potent antioxidant properties. And, what I tell people is strive to enjoy all of them because they all have unique features. So there's going to be things in lion's mane that are not in button mushrooms, or not in chanterelles, or not in shiitakes, blah, 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 blah. So I don't want to necessarily like single out certain ones as being like amazing, because they're all amazing. But I would strive to get variety when you can, to take advantage of all those amazing things, and that's unique to the different strains or varieties of mushrooms. And then I will say that the ones that end in oki, like shiitake, enoki, kind of the more Asian varieties of mushrooms, have um, have more of these polysaccharides that seem to be really good for immune function, right? And why is your immune system and immune function important? It's how we don't get infections, and it's how we don't get cancer, right? So two pretty big things there. So mushrooms, do them, do them, do them. The other thing I love about mushrooms is they cook up to a really meaty, savory, umami, yummy, flavor, even though they have such low calories. And we're really trying to encourage people to shift more to plant-based diets, plant-based diets, plant-based diets, because the data is just so strong. And mushrooms can be a great way to get the sense of eating meat without having meat, because their texture and their flavor, just kind of how they cook up. And I think there was a second part to this question about cooked versus raw. So
Correct.
you could absolutely eat raw mushrooms. Sometimes I've seen things on the web like, oh my God, don't eat raw mushrooms. They have toxins in them. Okay. So don't get, they're totally safe to eat mushrooms raw. But I will tell you, as a general rule, cooking them actually enhances their nutritional properties. It can boost the bioavailability of nutrients. It can actually increase the activity of certain antioxidants. There are certain mushrooms, particularly wild mushrooms, that can sometimes have, minor toxins in them, that if you cook them, those toxins will be denatured. If you didn't, you may get a little bit of stomach upset. And anyway, so cooking, if there are any sort of like anti-nutrients, a little bit of toxins in there, not that it could like harm, make you die or anything like that, or truly make you super sick, the heat from cooking will denature those. So, but you can certainly safely have them raw too.
Okay, next question says, what is the most healthful butter substitute? I've been under the impression that it is either Smart Balance or Earth Balance, but now I wonder.
Okay, so let's see. I think the way I'm going to answer this, or give my guidance on this, is I have a hard time kind of understanding how people use butter. So what you really want to be focusing on is focusing on the healthy fats. What are the healthy fats? So the monounsaturated fats, that's extra virgin olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocados, and then canola oil. So what I try to do is always, when I want fat in a food, and thank goodness we can have our fat and eat it too if we eat the healthy fats. And fat is what gives our food flavor. I'm going to always go for one of those, right? And, I don't do bread, so I don't do toast. I know that's a place people use butter. So I would want this person to, instead of using butter, can you use olive oil, or can you, use, or let's say it's oatmeal and people are like, oh, I want butter in my oatmeal. Well, can you use some nut butter in there? Can you add nuts to that? Just look for a different way to get the fat in to give you that flavor. And because these are the fats, these healthy fats will make you healthier, right? Whereas, butter is not going to do that. And I have no problems with small amounts of grass-fed butter. There are certain, I'm a foodie, I love cooking, and there's certain times that, butter is absolutely called for in terms of creating optimal flavor and taste. And so for me, it's going to be, if I'm going to make green beans, steamed green beans, I'm going to add a little butter to them. Where else are places that I would use a little butter? Sometimes with seafood, I'll do a combination of a little bit of grass-fed butter with my olive oil. Anyway, so I'm more of a purist, and I personally, for me, I don't buy the tub spreads. I think they're fun. Some that are, fine in small amounts. I think they're fine. And most all of them nowadays don't have trans fats in them, which was the big worry for so long in some of these, like, margarines and spreads. And so, I just buy a little bit of grass-fed butter and use that in the very, very occasional places I want to do that. Right. So hopefully I can get this person to and everyone just kind of think, why can't you use extra virgin olive oil? I've cooked dinner every night for the last 3 nights. It's been fish every night because someone bought some fresh fish to my husband. And so when you have fresh fish, you want to eat it. And I haven't used butter. I haven't used butter at any point in the last 3 days of my cooking or anything.
Okay, great. Next question. What are your thoughts on red yeast rice as a natural supplement for lowering cholesterol?
I think it's red rice yeast. So red rice yeast, I'm certainly no expert in that agent. I'm aware of it. I do know that the way that they discovered statin drugs was actually studying that compound, and it works in the body similar to the way statin drugs do. I know it can lower cholesterol, but I also know, just like when you take a statin drug, there are potential risk. You have to have your liver test monitored. That appears to be the case also for people taking the red rice yeast. So I would encourage someone to do that under a healthcare provider supervision, because there are potential toxicities with red rice yeast. Although from what I'm aware of, it can lower cholesterol.
Okay, great. And then a question from Instagram. What are your thoughts on Lacoy drinks and their relationship to kidney stones?
Okay.
In parentheses, natural flavoring.
Yeah. So hydration is critically important with kidneys, as a preventative for kidney stones, critically important. And LaCroix is just sparkling water, right? Right. They've added CO2 to it. You can make your own from CO2, right? And naturally flavored sparkling water, I have no problems with it. It is slightly acidic, but I think in the scheme of the benefits of doing that over some of these other beverages, I'm not worried about having, LaCroix as, occasional LaCroix or even some LaCroix every day. I do it. And I have a hard time seeing how LaCroix could be problematic for kidney stones. I don't know what I would be missing there. I think the benefits of the hydration would outweigh that. I'm not sure what this person may be referring to, but I typically consider sparkling waters with natural flavorings 100% fine. I consider them like, water, although there's slight acid in them, which, can sometimes have an impact on tooth enamel erosion, but certainly way, 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 way less than like sodas, including diet soda and regular soda.
Okay. Next question says, any natural glucosamine supplements? I don't know what
I don't know what this person means by natural glucosamine supplements. Glucosamine is glucosamine. And I actually take it. I have this hip injury. I'm trying to do everything I can to make it better. And I take, a joint health supplement.
Okay. And let's see. Okay, those are all the questions that have been submitted so far.
Great. Well, if there are none coming up.
And we could probably wait a second to see if anyone
Sure.
has any questions. We've got over 20 people on Instagram, several on Facebook and YouTube. And if people are looking for healthy living resources and they have not visited the link in your bio, they can go to your Instagram profile and click that link and access any of our free mini courses and lots of good printable downloads. Just informing people while we see if any other questions come in. And maybe this is a good time to tell people about the free live training in January.
Yes, great idea. Thank you, Zoe. So in January, 'cause 'tis the season, right, for resolutions, and people really excited about kind of getting back in the saddle with their health, and a lot of people, frankly, with weight control. I am going to be giving a live training. It is going to be free, um, where I'm focusing on the two essential strategies if you want to have lasting weight loss. In other words, lose weight and keep it off. Um, the two essential lifestyle strategies you must incorporate to have success. So many people are actively striving to lose weight. We know the data there. There are massive, massive numbers of people. And I thought, they need to know that these are two things you really have to figure out a way to build into your life most days. And I'm excited to give that. And again, it'll be totally free. It'll probably last about an hour. There should be time for Q&A afterwards. And it will also come with a detailed handout. And then I see the next question, any hyperthyroidism diet recommendation, do's and don'ts. I wish there was some dietary magic for hypothyroidism, and there really is not. And be grateful that we have replacement therapy. You can have your blood test and then take replacement doses, proper replacement doses of thyroid hormone. Most people that have hypothyroidism, it is an autoimmune condition, and part of your thyroid gland has been destroyed, and there's no, growing it back. And, again, that's one of the kind of like, okay, how can I reverse, gallstones? Well, no, you have them. And hypothyroidism is one of those things, despite what you may read on the web, that is typically a fixed condition, and there's no dietary magic to try to reverse it. And just be grateful we have good therapy for that. You're just taking the hormone. It's not like it's really even a drug. I mean, you're just taking, it's just like, postmenopausal women that go on hormone replacement therapy with their estrogen. It's thyroid hormone replacement therapy for a failing thyroid.
Okay, we have several more questions from Instagram. One asks for suggestions for boosting one's immune system.
Oh, so simplified. I do have a whole training on that, which I think was about an hour long. So obviously, don't have an hour that I can give you to tell you all the specifics, but I can give you the high points, and that is to really, really focus on brightly colored plant-based foods, more plant-based foods, more plant-based foods, more plant-based foods. Why? Because they're critical nutrients that are really important in immune function, and there's more nutrients per unit calorie in these plant-based foods. You're also going to get immune enhancing, immune stimulating phytochemicals in the plant-based foods, and this, fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. We know that your microbiome is integrally important to healthy immunity. 70% of your immune system, is virtually almost in direct contact with those, trillions of gut bugs you have in your intestinal tract. And we know that they are engaging and talking to one another constantly. And that's one big reason we want a healthy gut microbiome, because we know it has such a pivotal effect on your immune system. So the things that will increase the health of the gut microbiome, which is plant variety, right? Consuming lots of fiber. Where do you get fiber? Plants. And then the phytochemicals, particularly polyphenols that are in plants. Okay. The other things that come to mind are just staying away from processed foods. They're notoriously low in these nutrients that you need for your immune system, and they have ingredients that can actually work against our body. You know, they contain a number of bad for you things that can adversely affect your immune system. The other thing is sleep, 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 sleep. I cannot stress enough the impact sleep has. Everyone I bet on here has had crappy sleep and noticed they got sick after, you know, a night or two of crappy sleep. So you've got to have your sleep, and then physical activity is extraordinary. It is the only thing that acutely can actually, we can tell someone to go on a brisk walk, and when they get back, we can see a measurable difference in the activity and the numbers of immune cells that are released into their bloodstream. So staying physically fit, getting your sleep, and eating a whole food, you know, plant-based diet are the key things. And, you know, that's the answer for almost anything you ask me right there. Imagine that.
Okay, next questions. This person is wondering if chia seeds can be problematic from too much fiber regarding digestion. How much should you use?
I find it inconceivable that unless you are really, really doing something strange with chia seeds, you could consume a problematic amount. They are very, very high in fiber, particularly soluble fiber, which means they combine, and soluble fiber combines with liquid. I mentioned that earlier. In fact, 5 grams of soluble fiber can combine with a quart of water, right? And that weighs 2 pounds. That's a lot. That's why it's really good for appetite control. Anyway, and so I think it's totally fine. Make sure you're drinking your water when you have your chia seeds, because it'll just it makes it so much better for you in terms of the benefits of like feeling full and doing good things in your gut, to have the water with it. And I would think, when would you ever really be doing more than a couple tablespoons a day? You know, and I like mixing in a big jar a third of flaxseed, chia seeds, and hemp seeds, ground flax, chia seeds, hemp seeds, mix it all up, and do 2 to 3 heaping tablespoons of that mixture a day. So you can get the best of the whole trio, right? And just make sure you drink your water.
Okay, there are a couple questions from Facebook. She
Yeah.
says, what are your thoughts on monk fruit as a sweetener?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of hype. You know, where do I get, first of all, monk fruit sweetener? Yes, monk fruit is a natural fruit, but they've extracted, things from the monk fruit. So don't think that monk fruit sweetener is natural. So when you occasionally want a little something, little sugar, right? A little something sweet, add some sort of added sugar to put it on something. I'm always going to go with the real 100% natural things that I know our ancestors had access to from the beginning of time, like a little bit of honey or 100% maple syrup, which is just drawn straight out of the center of a tree. Things that did not have to be produced or, extracted in a factory, like almost all those kind of sweeteners that are out there. They're trying to masquerade as like these super healthy things. Anyway, so I think you're probably paying for something that, just when you occasionally want to put a little something sweet in something, which should really, I don't know, you should be doing less than a couple teaspoons a day. And assuming you're not a diabetic, if you're diabetic, you shouldn't be doing that. Then I would just prefer that you use natural sweetener like raw honey or 100%, real maple syrup, not the fake stuff, right? A lot of fake syrup out there. It needs to be real maple syrup. And then you could also do blackstrap molasses, right? It's kind of splitting hairs though. If you want to do your monk fruit, do I have a big problem with that? No. Assuming if you're using sweeteners like you should, which is not much and not very often.
Okay, and then I think you can see this next one. MTFHR positive natural remedies or supplements recommendations.
Yeah, there's no MTHFR. So this is a modified form of a very important gene. And I actually have one copy of the MTHFR. And you can't revert. I mean, it's a gene, and you can't reverse that. There's nothing you can do. So if you have that, you're supposed to take methylated folate because people that have MTHFR, one copy you'll get. I don't know. Is it about a 10 to 15% reduction in your body's ability to methylate folate, and your folate is a real important B vitamin, and it's not active unless it's methylated, right? So it's extremely important, this methylation reaction in the body. If someone has two copies of it, they have 30% plus less ability to methylate folate. And so what we do is we simply tell those people they need to take a supplement of methylated folate. There's no such thing as a natural remedy. You just have to take methylated folate, and you want to take it as directed.
Great. Okay, here's another question. Dr. Ann, you mentioned the health benefits of red onions. Do you get the same benefits if they're pickled?
Yeah. So I'm not aware of any nutrients that are in onions that would be diminished by a pickling process, and there may be some that are enhanced. So I love pickled onions. And you are, yes, typically the way you pickle onions, you are cooking them a little bit, but not super high heat for very long. There may be a little diminishment of some of those antioxidants depending on, how intense the heat, but from what I remember in the recipe for pickling onions, it's not particularly high heat for too long. So, but if the heat can, prolonged higher heat can diminish some of those nutrients possibly.
Okay. And I just have to say that the Instagram page refreshed and I lost some of the last questions that were visible. So if you're still listening and your question didn't get answered on Instagram and you can type it in again, that would be great.
Yeah.
But there is one here. What are your thoughts on alternative milks?
Oh, alternative milks. Okay. So let's just, look at facts. Okay. When you look at all the milks, what are the ones that have the best overall nutritional profile, right? The most nutrients and, most good stuff in them. So it's going to be plain organic soy milk or organic cow's milk. All right. Those are the top two nutritionally. Okay. Now, and so my general recommendations are, the only time I would use an alternative milk is that someone can't do cow's milk or someone can't do soy milk, right? Or they can't do both, right? Then you'd go, thank goodness, there are these milk alternatives for when you want to have milk. So for example, soy milk is what I choose, but my husband likes oat milk. And the only place he uses it is a teeny bit in his coffee, right? I mean, that's the only place he uses it because otherwise he's going to use kefir or yogurt or something like that. And we don't do cereals. In fact, if he has some sort of cereal, some good healthy granola, he's going to always add kefir to that or yogurt to that versus adding milk. But I was craving a minute ago, I was craving hot cocoa. And you can see I had some hot cocoa. And the only milk in my refrigerator was oat milk, and I had the oat milk. Anyway, and there's nothing wrong with these plant-based or milk alternatives. They just don't have the nutritional oomph. And unfortunately, many of them do have emulsifiers present, so they're a bit more processed. And you can find them. The one I just had, it's got some thickener in it, but it doesn't have emulsifiers anyway. So you have to kind of know that that's another problem with some of these plant-based and these milk alternatives is they're adding these thickeners. We don't really know about the health ramifications of thickeners yet. Maybe they're not bad, but maybe they are. Who knows? And then some of them add emulsifiers, which we're definitely concerned about. So, if you're going to choose one, just look at the ingredients and like, what are the least ingredients I can get? Can you get one that is just like just oats, like just oats, and there are more and more of those kind of really more wholesome ones available. So here's a
Okay,
question:
and
thoughts on
yeah.
protein powders and your favorite, if any. So I'm not a big fan of protein powders at all because I'm a big advocate of eating real food. Because real food is what humans have eaten from the beginning of time. That's what our systems are accommodated to, and this is what we have evolved eating. Um, and obviously, protein powders are definitely coming out of a factory. Okay, so they are in a sense clearly processed. Uh, anyway, so I would rather you just use some real protein. Can you have some nuts? Can you have some seeds? Can you have some nut butters? Can you have some beans? And I know people sometimes like it because it's convenient and they're maybe making a smoothie and they want to put some protein in there. Well, I would still rather you add some nut butter or, you know, something like that. And if you're going to do a protein powder, I would make sure it's organic. And then I would, try to get one that has like is very as wholesome as possible. Like, I know I've seen one that's the only ingredient is ground hemp seeds. So that is kind of excites me. Hemp protein powder, just minimal ingredients. And you look at the ingredients, you're like, oh, I could have all the, not chemicals, not strange names, and make sure it's organic. But I don't do protein powder. I eat real food.
Okay, this person says, can you remind me what is in your triple seed mix?
Yes, so it's pretty much equal parts of flax seeds, ground. Okay, you can buy them ground or you grind them yourself, but it's easier. You can buy them in ground form. So ground flax seeds, hemp seeds, also sometimes referred to as hemp kernels, and then chia seeds. And all of these seeds are now broadly available, even in standard grocery stores. We've always been able to get them in healthy grocery stores like Whole Foods and, Earth Fare and some of these other, higher end healthy grocery stores. But the standard grocers, more and more of them will just have those right on the shelf.
Okay. What is your opinion on full fat dairy?
Yeah, so this is an area, it's pretty rare that I have a shift in my, what I've been teaching for years. And this is an example of one. And that is because if we're coming, I'm evidence based in my guidance. So I'm coming from a standpoint of real devotion to the science of nutrition, right? And we have learned mostly, the data started to come out, probably a little more than a decade ago, but I was not ready. I needed more. I needed more. I needed more because it was always my recommendation of, which would be in line with most qualified nutrition experts, that we wanted people to do low fat, reduced fat, or skim dairy instead of full fat dairy. Well, the data to me is now enough, and I took longer than some other nutrition experts to kind of flip, and there's still some that haven't. But to me, that we have enough data to say that full fat dairy can be included as part of a balanced diet. Because what we see is not all saturated fats. So the concern we've always had with full fat dairy was it contains high amounts of saturated fats, which is true. But we now know that there are different types of saturated fats, and in the body, the way they are handled and how they impact us is different depending on the length of their chain length of these saturated fatty acids. And we see in full fat dairy that there are a fair amount of these shorter chain saturated fats, which tend to be more neutral. I'm not saying they're good for you. And they're, particularly if you get grass fed, based dairy, you're also going to get some CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, which has some unique benefits. So the other thing we see in the data is it tends to be more sating, and weight control is like that's like the holy grail. If someone is not a healthy body weight, the top thing they can do assuming they're a non-smoker, to improve their health is to get that excess weight off. I mean, it is just the master lever for improving all aspects of health. Um, and we see that full fat dairy appears to be more sating and can keep people from eating as much after versus if they had low fat or skim. That said, I'm still fine with people doing reduced fat or skim if they want. Okay, I don't think there's any. I mean, I think those things are fine. You're getting the nutrients. It's just that now I'm okay with the fats in dairy. Does that make sense? So I do full fat goat milk kefir, um, which is pretty much, and then small amounts of artisanal cheeses. That's pretty much the dairy that I consume.
Okay, someone asks, do you have a go-to breakfast with high protein, 40 grams plus protein?
So, I do time restricted feeding. So I try to limit my feeding to a 10-hour window. And I just do 2 meals a day. And I haven't eaten yet. And I don't necessarily recommend people do that. Normally I would have. I just ran out of time with all the things I had to do. And believe it or not, I'm hungry, but not terribly hungry. And I will eat after I finish this. But so normally I like to eat about between 10 and 10:30. And I do 2 meals, dinner and that meal. Um, and 40 grams of protein, uh, I don't think you have to get 40 grams of protein at your first feeding. I think 25 to 30 is going to be enough. Um, and what you have to do with protein is you just need to kind of have some basic benchmarks memorized and just kind of add it up. The other thing I'll say is the human body is remarkably adept at getting the amount of protein it typically needs. The exception of that is people that have restrained weird eating, or they can't, like the elderly. I think with the stats, 96% of the people in America get more than enough protein. Anyway, so I can't like reel off breakfasts that have 40 grams, but I can tell you the number of grams in the standard protein. So if you have 3 ounces of any animal protein, any fish, chicken, beef, whatever it is, that's so the size of a deck of cards, you're going to be getting between 20 and 24 grams of protein right there. Eggs, depending on the size of the egg, you can get 6 or maybe 7 grams of protein. You have yogurt. Oh my gosh. And Greek yogurt, you can get 21 grams in a standard serving. Anyway, and I don't know if you ever use Chat GPT. I played around, Chat GPT, which is AI, and Chat GPT is free, at least the basic version. You can put in there and you could say, can you tell me 5 breakfasts that contain 30 grams of protein and that are healthy and contain all plant-based foods? And it will just spit it out immediately. So really great resource to use Chat GPT for that. And I've done that. But I think most people over the course of your day, you're going to get plenty of protein, but it can be really helpful to have it in your mind to make sure that first feeding you're getting a nice dose, because it appears to help you eat less the rest of the day.
Okay. All right. Well,
And
I
just tell people what I'm going to probably eat. And again, I'm not calculating. I mean, I just trust that the way I eat, I'm getting plenty of protein. I made a big vat of black-eyed peas in the Instapot. Oh my gosh, they're so flipping good. It inspired me. I'm gonna start making sure I do that every week. And they're seasoned, they're delicious. This is going to be the 3rd day I've been eating on those. And so I'm going to have, probably at least a cup of those. That's 16 grams of protein right there. And then I'm going to dice up some tofu. And this is going to be instantaneous lunch. It's already, those things are already in there. Just dice up the tofu, add that to the beans, and that's going to give me an additional probably, 7 or 8 grams right there, maybe 10 grams. So now I'm up to 35 grams right there. If there's a cup of beans, it's going to give me about 16 grams, 12. It depends on the type of bean, 12 to 16 grams. And then I'm going to add another 10 grams. And then I'm going to have some Asian coleslaw left over. not really much protein in that. And I was thinking about adding a salmon burger to that. So it's probably what I'm gonna have. I'm gonna have a salmon burger, and that's right there gonna be 21 grams of protein. A frozen salmon burger from Costco. I'll have a little bit of that Asian slaw probably on top of that. And then on the side, I probably want to do a cup of the black eyed peas because that's just more food than I need. I'll probably do more like a half cup. Uh anyway, so all right.
Yeah, we're at almost an hour. So those
Okay.
are all the questions.
Great. Well, thank y'all so much. I'm going to try to do these regularly. It may be, and I'm trying to figure out the sweet spot because I want enough questions accumulated. Um, anyway, it may be that I do them every 2 weeks versus weekly, just to have more big bank of questions and also to free me up to do the other things that I have to do to help y'all. So, all right. Thank you.
And just a reminder for those who joined late that you can sign up for the live weight loss live training at the link in the bio. You can register right away, and we'll notify you before that event on January 11th.
And yeah, it's January 11th. Okay. Thank y'all. Have a great Christmas and a great holiday because I won't be seeing you until after that. Okay.